Hey, Business Builder. Today, I'm joined by Paul Barron. Paul is the founder of The Wall Printer. The Wall Printer is a company that sells a vertical printer that goes up and down walls, prints murals. He sells the ink for those printers, and he coaches business owners who are buying the device so they can build their own independent business, doing, 4x8 murals, 4x8 signs within businesses, 4x8 on people's homes, right? Like inside their house, all sorts of things that you could print on a vertical surface as opposed to on a horizontal surface. My daughter's an artist, so this is a special place in my heart. She could do things on digital, for example, on her tablet, and then that could get printed inside a business. That might scare some artists because they wish that they could go paint a mural. For others, this will be a great business idea. Anyway, Paul is 70 years old. He's one of the older business builders that I've interviewed, or wiser. And I think that's really cool because you get to hear his whole journey. You hear the ups, the downs. And what's unique about Paul's journey is he's built several businesses with a partner and then been bought out by the partner. And then for a while, he's gone and gotten high-end jobs, sales jobs, factory production direction jobs, and every time he gets a job, then he learns more, and then he goes back to build another business. He's had tennis and apparel shops. He started a software product. Now he's got the wall printer. He had a high-end restaurant. He did have a failure, which he talks about very openly in this interview when he was about age 40. And this is the roller coaster of entrepreneurship. And Paul is at this point in life is a happy guy with a wealth advisor, thinking about how to take care of his whole team and his dogs because he doesn't have any kids. And can't wait to share it. Welcome to the Business Builder Way podcast, where we help business builders grow leadership skills and wisdom and stay grounded through hero stories. So let's get after it. Hey, business builders. I'm joined today by Paul Barron. And Paul, it's really good to have you with us today. And Paul, where we like to start is tell us about your call to entrepreneurship. How did you get started on the journey?
It was a self-inflicted wound back in, I don't have to go that far back. I'm in my 70s now, so we can go back to where I finished college, and my destiny, so I thought, was going to be to a high school mathematics teacher. It's what I always wanted to do. I enjoyed the subject matter, enjoyed engagement with people, students especially. My education was leading me in that direction. And when I graduated college with my Bachelor's of Science degree in mathematics, I got a job teaching and enjoyed it. Might be teaching to this day if it wasn't for all the other administrative activities that surrounded teaching that I found difficult to manage. Early on, I learned what hats I liked to wear and which ones I didn't like to wear. And basically, I put myself through college. I put myself through college through the good graces of my parents. But for spending money, for going out, I had a job stringing tennis rackets for the college athletic department. And although the package that you see here, if your audience has video, it's not the same as it was back in college. I'm still a competitive tennis player 50 years later. But I strung tennis rackets, enjoyed the activity, made some good money doing it. And when I had my teaching job out of college, a friend of mine was out of work. A friend of mine through the tennis community that I was in, and we decided to open up a little tennis sporting goods store to continue that initiative that got me to that point with through college, and so we opened up a tennis shop, and of course, beyond just stringing tennis rackets, we started offering all the products and services that go along with it. Some tennis lessons, some shoes and clothing, and then it drifted into other areas outside of tennis and sneakers. And the school that I went to at New Paltz at State University of New York was known for its dance and arts programs. So we started bringing on those types of clothing, and the store grew, and my attention was taken away from my teaching activities. And again, I didn't like a lot of the administrative. I didn't like a lot of the interaction with the parents, and also the responsibilities that went beyond the classroom. And so as I got into my second and third year teaching, I was devoting more and more time to my retail shop and left to my teaching responsibilities. And it was the third year that I was teaching, it was my tenure year. And the head of the mathematics department approached me and said, Paul, we really like what you do. The students like you, we'd like you to stay on, but we understand you have outside interests and you're going to have to make a decision. And I was in my early 20s and I appreciated the direction and the concern, so to speak, that I was doing the right thing for myself as well as for the school that had hired me. And so I had to make a decision. As Yogi Berra once said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And so I decided to give up teaching after 3 years, and I went into full-time with the tennis shops. We grew that shop to 1, 2, 3 shops after that in the Hudson Valley region of New York, where I was. And then a family friend, my mother actually worked for a manufacturing company, a jewelry manufacturer, had been with that company for some 25 years or so. And the owner of the company and his son were family friends of ours. And he saw what I was doing with my tennis shops and growing them. And he wanted to know if Paul would be interested in coming to work for him. And my mother said, I don't know, you just have to ask Paul. He never does anything we want him to do. So, give it a shot. And so he made me the proverbial offer I couldn't refuse. And my partner agreed to be bought out in my tennis shops, or he bought me out rather,
Right.
and then went to work for this company. And that started a seesaw pattern, which has gone on for some 30 years or so after that, where I would work for a company, learn things that I didn't know, and then invariably I always got back to wanting to be independent and controlling of my own destiny and operating my own business. I think that jewelry company was a real good pivot point in my career because I did very well. I wore 2 different hats there. One was the sales hat, where I was traveling 2 weeks out of the month, going to customers, visiting different cities all around the country, given the opportunity to travel, which I had never done. And I was in a city, I would go, wine and dine people and go through the sales process of trying to close deals and get orders for the company from these customers. I was in 5 cities in 5 days. It was a whirlwind couple of weeks on the road. And then I'd go back into the factory and I'd oversee the manufacturing and the delivery and the distribution end of things. All areas that I just learned and, on the job learning, so to speak. But I did very well for myself and for the company. Again, learning the hats I like to wear and the ones I didn't like to wear. At that point, I really liked the customer relationships aspect of business. And I did not like too much of the administrative and the record keeping and the financial. And certainly there was a team growing, and I didn't like the hiring and firing and managing of people. I really was an independent person and wanted to just be responsible for whatever success I would bring to the company, myself, my customers. And so that's what I really enjoyed. But I did very well for the company. And after the 2 years or so, I got a very nice Christmas bonus. I'm still in my 20s. I was living large, as they say. I was enjoying life. Had a nice condo on the beach on Long Island. Everything was good. And I got a 1,000, again, this is back in the 70s.
Sure.
Just some kind of time frame. I received a $1,000 bonus, which may not sound like a lot these days, but back then it was a lot. And I was making a good 5-figure salary. And so I went to the owner and I said, look, I really appreciate, this opportunity. I've learned a lot. I'm really enjoying it. And I appreciate the bonus you gave me, but I understand what I've done, because behind the scenes, my mother's the bookkeeper for the company. And she told me what the owners took as a bonus as a result of the sales that I brought in. And it was a considerable amount of money, more than, of course, I earned as what they gave me. And I said, look, I really do appreciate this job. The bonus was excellent. Thank you very much. I go, but I kind of think I deserve a raise. And the owner said something to me, which I carry to this day, and I hope holds true for myself and my employees that have occurred through different businesses over the years. He said to me, he said, Paul, listen, he said, you do a great job. And when you work for me or anybody, I'll make sure, or at least for me, I'll make sure that you get paid more than anybody else will pay you, because I really want you here and I like you here and you do a good job. But I'll tell you this, you'll never make what you think you're worth if you don't work for yourself. And so I took that to heart and I quit. And so I ended up getting an offer from a competitor of theirs who allowed me just to do the sales part 2 weeks out of the month. and be on the road and get customers and do none of the factory work and none of the distribution end of things. And
Right.
I was making twice the money in half the time. And so that lasted for several years. I enjoyed that, learned a lot more again about sales and customer relationships, and developing them and building them and referrals and things like that, honing those types of skills. And then another friend of mine, similar to my original tennis journey, was in the food service business. He operated a college bar. He'd just gotten engaged. He wanted to kind of settle down. The college bar business was a crazy business, in the college town where we lived in upstate New York. And so he said he wanted to focus on a nice upscale type of seafood steakhouse restaurant. And the more I got to know him, the more I respected his background and his knowledge and his ability to be successful at something like that. I had some money socked away from the job that I had just completed. And I said, well, if you could sell the bar that you're in and your partner will buy you out, similar to what happened with me with my tennis shops. I said, I've got some money put aside. He goes, let's figure out if we could do this together. I'm not interested in the food business per se, but I would like to find a nice building and real estate. I was getting into a little bit. And I said, I wouldn't mind renovating a building if we can to make a nice restaurant the way you're describing it. And so we took a year off, the two of us, and he did sell out his interest in his bar. I quit the job that I was on. We put money aside that we thought we could invest in something to get started. And we spent a year together, the two of us. Again, we were tennis friends, as many of my relationships have been throughout the years. We spent a year, probably one of the best years of my life. We got up in the morning, we exercised, we played tennis together, we went out for lunch somewhere at a restaurant to see what they were doing and looking at menus, looking at decor, all the aspects of that restaurant. In the afternoon, we'd go play tennis again, and then in the evening, we'd find a place for dinner. And we did that for a full year. Probably 300 days out of the year, we went out for lunch and dinner and played tennis. It was a wonderful year. And what we were doing really was deciding whether or not we could be in bed with one another, whether or not this was a partnership. And that's something else just to share with you and your audience. Partnerships can be good and bad. They can be based in friendship. They can be based in money. They can be based in, investment. There's all sorts of, they can be based in skill sets. There are all sorts of different ways and reasons why partnerships should occur and sometimes why they shouldn't. I've been very lucky. I've had one bad partnership, one or two over the years that were, I consider, bad partnerships because we both didn't understand each other's expectations. This particular one was a winner. After the year, we did decide exactly what we wanted to do together. We bought a building. I was involved in the renovation. I got sucked into what's the right expression? The glamour of the restaurant business, if you will. I learned how to tend bar. I learned how to cook. I learned how to wash dishes because I wanted to know what everybody else had to do. And that's another aspect of my learning experiences over the year. People ask me often, what's a real good leader, Paul? What makes you a good CEO? And I appreciate somebody asking me that question. I don't know that I am necessarily, but they always comes up in conversations like this. What have you learned over the years that makes a good leader? And I said, well, I've learned that it means that you hire the best people for the jobs that are required, but you're wise enough to back off and let them do it. And so that was my first experience with that was the restaurant business when we had about 80, 85 employees, and everybody was much more capable than me in their own areas.
One restaurant?
One
fine dining restaurant? Okay, I hear maybe you'll go somewhere else.
Good.
Just curious, what was it called?
Ward's Bridge Inn. It's in Montgomery, New York. I'm very proud of the fact that restaurant, which we founded and built in 1979, is still open today, 45 years later.
Wow.
It's very unusual for a restaurant. I was in it for 12 years.
How do you spell it? What is it?
Ward's Bridge Inn, WARDS, Ward's Bridge Inn. Because the town of Montgomery, we learned, because we bought a historical building and renovated it and restored it and built a restaurant inside of it. But we learned that the town was of Montgomery, New York, which is outside of Newburgh, New York, about 75 miles north of New York City. The town used to be called Ward's Bridge. So we did a lot of history and research and all that stuff. And that's how we named the restaurant. but it's still open today. Basically the same menu we created back then, although it's gone through 2 different owners since then. I was in it for 12 years with my partner, to the point that the restaurant, we grew. It started out as a 75-seat restaurant. We renovated more areas of the building we bought to make it into, and we added a sunroom with more seats, and it became a 150-seat restaurant. We bought adjacent property and made a bed and breakfast out of it, or actually we advertised it as a bed and dinner, where people would come up from New York City, have dinner and stay over at our guest house. One of the early Airbnbs, I guess you would call it, but it was there was no such thing back then.
Right.
But anyway, that was 12 years. And
how old were you? How old were you at that time?
So 79, I was 28 years old when I founded the restaurant, and I stuck through it until I was about 40 years old. And in 1990 or so, about 1990, when I was at 40 years old, 39 years old, I moved to Florida to follow my parents, who had retired during this time. And they moved from New York to Florida. And I said, boy, I could play tennis every day down there, as opposed to upstate New York. And so where you can still play tennis, but you have to spend a lot of money playing indoors tennis half the year. And so so I decided to move to Florida because my partner was he was still the restaurant guy, and he was running the restaurant was running very well, with or without me. My role in the restaurant was basically just to keep people in their seats, and keep them happy and in the place, while my partner and the staff took over and made their experience very nice. The restaurant always had standing room only, and sellout crowds every night. It was a wonderful experience, and a really good restaurant, and still is today, I'm sure. I did go back to lunch a couple of years ago and brought my wife there to see it. But again, it was a wonderful experience. But when I moved to Florida, I said, okay, I'm going to play tennis. You know, I'm 40 years old. I go, what else am I going to do? I wake up in the morning. What's Paul going to do when he grows up? And so my most recent successful experience was the restaurant business. And so I said, okay, I reached out to my partner. I said, I think maybe I'll open up a copy of our restaurant here in Florida. And he said, I don't know if that's such a good idea. And I said, well, we've done really well. And, this looks like a good market, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I didn't do that 1 year of research like we did up in New York. And I didn't really understand the market very well. But I was all in on my idea that I could duplicate what I did in New York. When I finally opened the restaurant, which was a year behind schedule, built the building and was involved with partners that had another agenda in mind. They looked at the restaurant as kind of a lost leader, so to speak, and kind of a tax write-off. It was my life at the time. And so anyway, to cut the story short, what I made in 12 years in New York, I lost it 1 year in Florida. Was forced into bankruptcy, and it was what I like to call, I never look at these experiences as failures, but learning experiences. And so that's what that was. And then I had to decide what I was going to do when I grow up once again. And so, and now more out of necessity financially than what it was a couple of years earlier. And so I went back to my roots of math and computers, because computers had emerged over this time. And I had another friend who had a problem with his company that could be solved with a computerized solution. And I started a little software company. Actually, it started as a hardware company, but then migrated to a software company. And I developed a little application that was in the telephone call center marketing arena, if you will. And it became a very successful little application. That took me into a whole new world as getting known as a communications consultant. And so when I successfully exited that company.
Did you have employees at the little software company?
I'm sorry?
Did you have employees at that little software company? Was it you or?
I wore, of course, the sales and marketing hat, which is what I wore. I knew enough about programming and computers and software to be dangerous. So I hired people to do that, as I mentioned earlier, get more capable people. I had the idea for what the application should do, hired people to do that. So I had a couple of programmers, and then an office manager, so to speak, and myself, who wore the sales and marketing hat. And I engaged the companies like AT&T and Nortel and Lucent Technologies well, AT&T became Lucent Technologies, and Mitel and other companies that manufactured telephone equipment. This was a software application that basically took caller ID and then screen popped the database record. It was the first application made that now when you call Domino's Pizza and you want to order pizza, they know who you are based on your caller ID. It could now pop up a map and directions to your house and remind your credit card is stored and all that kind of stuff. Well, the whole trigger for that, the caller ID, that was a technology that just became available in the 80s and early 90s. So I took that and created a software application. Anyway,
how did you? Paul, where did you get money? Where did you get? You said you had declared bankruptcy and lost in a year what you made in 12. This time around, where did you get the money to start this little software company and hire people? You sound like very resourceful and.
Yeah, it didn't take a lot of money to start this company. It took more talent than treasure. I like to say the three elements for any business, the three T's are time, talent, and treasure. I had the time, certainly, but I was out of work. I didn't have any talent myself. I just had the idea, which I guess is a talent, but I had an idea for something that I didn't know whether it was going to be a winner or a loser. But then I found a programmer who also thought that this was kind of a cool idea and who had the talent to be able to implement that. And so he became a partner in this, and he devoted his time, not necessarily treasure, but his time to do that. I was still, and it's a really great question, Wayne, because I guess the money to be able to just feed myself, I was single still.
Okay, I was curious about that too, because you're 40, and I know as some people get to be 40, that now they've gotten accustomed to certain lifestyle things, or there's maybe children, maybe spouse, maybe whatever to kind of feed.
My circumstances allowed me to be a little bit more flexible in that I was not married. I didn't have any children, by marriage or otherwise, that I was aware of. And so I did have that level of independence. And then I also had the very good graces, once again, of friendships. Again, if there's video, there's a picture on the wall above me of friends that date back to college days. And in fact, one of the couples there, one of my friends is from the time I was basically born in grade school, that we remained friends over 50 plus years, some 70 years. And I had my parents still at the time, they passed since, but I still had the good graces of all of these people who kind of believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And so they were able to help me on the financial end of things during this difficult time financially. Plus they basically allowed me to get through those times that I couldn't from the treasure end of things. And so I was able to feed myself. I was able to put gas in my car. I was able to get to the office. I was able to, put whatever money down was necessary to lease a little office space to do this programming and establish this business. But it was a shoestring for sure. And it did require, because it was a software development project, it required time and talent and money.
So now the three T's, which we hear in church and stewardship sometimes: time, talent, and treasure. And then you've got your fourth T, tennis. Did tennis help keep you going at that time?
It did. Everybody needs a release. And sometimes it is your family and your children. Sometimes it's your friends. Sometimes it's an athletic pursuit. People get into running for whatever reason they do. I only did that very briefly at one point in my life. But again, it was a cathartic exercise at the time, more than the desire for a physical improvement. Now, of course, I look for ways to physically improve this aging body. But tennis it's carried through, and the relationships I built through tennis, like my restaurant, like my sporting goods store. These are all relationships that really started on the tennis court for me. When I had the software company, I actually did have a partner who invested in me, who was somebody who I met at a tennis tournament. We sat next to each other. We became good friends. He became a mentor of mine. He was an oil and gas guy from Texas, and he kind of took me under his wing because I was coming on the downside of the restaurant failure. And so, so I had people. I was very blessed in that regard, and to this day. And then I did get married. I've married 30 years now. So shortly at this point, I did meet my wife. We married, and And God bless her, 30 years of me is no easy task for anybody. It wasn't on my parents and friends, and it certainly isn't on her, but she's been flexible enough as my journey continued to be with me on all the pivot points that came after that and for these past 30 years now. And here we are doing very well in my latest venture, which actually culminated about 33 decades after I sold that software company. So after the restaurant learning experience came the software company, which was a win for me.
Nice.
And I became, as a result of that journey of about 3 or 4 years with that software company, I got this reputation as being a communication consultant. I was hired by a company that was coming out of the development cycle who wanted to enter the sales cycle. And they hired me to bring their product to market and to find their customers for them. It's a relationship that then bridged into a Russian company that had very similar technology to the company I was representing. Once again, a business that made me the offer I couldn't refuse to come work for them. It was a wonderful company, wonderful people, local and current politics aside. The Russian people are very good people innately. We're not influenced by their government, but it was a relationship that lasted 12 years for me. We still exchange Christmas and birthday cards these days, but that lasted until about the year 2000. It was about 12 years of me representing their software technology here in the United States, helping them find their customers, strategic partners, and otherwise to deliver their call center communication, navigation system software, MP3, music, audio software, all sorts of applications they had. That was wonderful technology that sits on the chips of what most people's devices are in their hands today. Any Apple Music that you hear was the technology developed by this company that plays music clips on every Apple device. I licensed that to Apple. There was a Samsung. You see on the CSI shows that you watch on TV, how they track you down on your cell phone because of the GPS chip that's in your phone. That technology that sits on those chips was developed by this company, and I licensed it to Samsung. And so that was a very, very successful 12 years until China emerged on the world stage, and that was in Moscow's backyard. And I had done all I could for this company in the United States in helping them articulate their technology to the American audience, which was the basic reason they hired me, is they wanted somebody who could communicate with Americans better than they could. And it was really just, it wasn't a talent thing on my end at all. It was the fact that I spoke English better than they did. But it turned into a really great relationship, both financially and otherwise for me. And then I found out during that stint of 10 years that I had a good talent of articulating the technology of a foreign company to the US audience. And so from there was a whole series of things. There was an Austrian baby bottle manufacturer that wanted to introduce an innovative baby bottle design, and they hired me to do that. Then there was an Australian self-service dog wash that was coming to the United States that wanted to put its products into pet shops and car washes and other places where people might wash dogs and dog parks and things like that. And
I saw that, and I saw some of the press release. I saw like a press release in Wilmington, North Carolina, where you live now, about the dog wash.
Yeah, so that's in between all of these stints that I'm describing to you and your audience. In between these things, I would always surf the net, always look for things, see what popped out, what interested me. Sometimes these things actually found me. Sometimes I found them, and would then reach out and see, is there a deal to be made? Is this a product that I want to represent? Most of the time, it happened as a hired gun for these companies. But again, I always longed for that independence and for owning something. And so I always looked for opportunities to get an equity stake in something. And so it was never presenting itself to the extent that I wanted. I would bring these companies and their products up to a point that usually somebody else ended up buying the company, or basically put myself out of a job because I I reached a certain milestone that they had hired me to achieve for them, whether it be a relationship with a customer, an exit, or just growth or whatever else, because I didn't want to get in a position where when it got to the point that more people had to come on board, I didn't want to manage them. I didn't want to get into that aspect of the business, and I usually got bored and I found something else to get passionate about. So I was retired, as I did a couple of times over these past 10, 15 years. And about 4 years ago, a call came in from a company that had this vertical printing machine. It was a German company. Once again, they wanted me to represent them here in the United States and bring their product to market. Coolest thing I'd ever seen, never saw anything like it. Don't know anything about the printing world. I have no background whatsoever in this industry.
Just because vertical printing, I've looked at it, I see it, and I know you're going to talk more about it, but just the quick, what is vertical printing? What is a little bit of what that is?
As the name implies, it is a machine that prints. It's your, let's say, it's an inkjet printer on steroids that allows you to take any digital art image, and then it's a machine that will allow a digital image to be printed on any wall, which is where the vertical part comes in. We also actually now have, which I've helped create, a floor printer, which actually prints horizontally on a floor, like a company's logo in the foyer, or a personalized parking space in a garage, or a shark on the bottom of a swimming pool, or I guess people would prefer a porpoise, not a shark. But in any
right.
In any case, art on floors or walls. So a vertical printing machine has a tall rail that could be anywhere from 8 to 12 feet, and a print head that, unlike your desktop printer, that is contained within the machine and prints on a piece of paper, going across, printing pictures or text or whatever on a piece of paper on your desktop printer. This prints, it sprays ink onto a wall, going up and down with each pass, building the image, moving horizontally. The whole machine moves horizontally, but the print head itself moves up and down vertically on the wall, which is why it's called a vertical printing machine, because it's printing vertically, but it's moving horizontally.
And very high resolution. Again, not everybody's going to watch the video.
Photo quality. It is not the same as, let's say, a signage shop with a $150,000 desktop flatbed printer, as they're called, that's designed to print photo quality stuff on signs. We can print very distinct text and near photo quality images. But there are two wall printings on my walls behind me in my office there. I'm Zoom challenged when I talk, when I point.
Yeah. No, you're doing good. Move your finger.
But my dog is on paper. And if you came up and you looked at it, it's a very clear picture. It's not the same thing you would see on your computer or on your phone, because when you enlarge something to be 3 feet by 4 feet or 10 feet by 20 feet, you're going to lose resolution in a picture you take with your phone, which these pictures in my office are. They're phone pictures, but which are JPEGs, which only enlarge a certain amount before they look like garbage. And then they need graphics work to be applied to them to make them look good. Or you get what's called a vector image, which is the type of image that is digitally created that can enlarge to any size at all. And that's what you see outdoors on murals and billboards and things like that, that can blow up to any size and still have photo quality finish. So, but because it's an inkjet printer and it's spraying ink, not a laser printer that's printing of a different quality, a better quality, it gets to be 1440 DPI, which is the best in the industry. And for somebody looking at a mural, you really can't tell anything. There's another little wall printing on the door here in my office, and there's text there, which is very readable. It's very distinct, and you can use it for signage if you wanted to, because you don't have to print directly to a wall. You could print on a big vinyl banner if you wanted to, or glass or wood or plastic or anything else, because the inks will go indoors, outdoors, on any surface. But I kind of digress.
Yes, but a good digression. It's just that idea of printing vertically and seeing this almost print head or printer going up and down a wall and creating a mural that may have been computer generated graphic or whatever. Now we get it. Vertical printing. So you met these people from Germany and they said, hey, we got this vertical printer.
Again, just to I apologize, I don't have any kind of video display to show you to add context to it. But if somebody goes to our website, thewallprinter.com, 15 seconds on our website tells you everything you need to know. If you see you see a video of the machine working, you get it. It's not a complex machine, and again, that's why it's good for my brain. When this German company approached me, and I took a look at the video of what it was they were asking me to market for them in the United States, I said, boy, that's really cool. Never seen anything like it before. And in fact, I'll fast forward here a little bit, and we had that little courtship dance. to see if I wanted to work and represent this company. But I loved it so much, I wanted to buy into the company, and they didn't want me to. They just wanted to hire sales. They wanted to hire me as a salesperson, and I wasn't going to do that anymore. So as much as I liked the product, I didn't like the deal that was being presented to me, and so I passed on it. But when I hung up, and this is after a series of conversations, of course, that we tried to make it work, but it just did not. I said, that's just a really cool machine. I've never seen anything like it before. So I said, let me do my homework and see what else is out there, because I kind of think of myself, and people would argue this point, I think of myself as normal in terms of being a consumer, that if I can afford something and it's an actual solution to a problem, and anybody out there looking to get into business, you may have a great idea, but if it's not solving somebody's problem, it's probably not going to be worth making a business out of it, or going through the effort of developing a product or a service. If there's a real problem and you can solve it with your idea or your product or your service, hey, then maybe it has legs. Go ahead and pursue the path of discovery to see if you want to make a business out of that. But my only words of wisdom in this call. So here I wanted to see, well, why did I never see anything like this? Because I think of myself as a normal consumer. If I can afford it, if it adds some value to me, if it solves a problem that I might have. To me, there aren't many ways to put art on walls. You can hand paint it. You can buy a picture. You can take a picture like I did of my dogs here, of my friends, and you can frame it and you can put it on the wall. And by the way, for your audience, that's not a real frame. That's a picture of a frame we put around the picture of my friends. It's all two-dimensional on a piece of canvas that we printed. Of course, my wife wouldn't let me print directly to the walls in my office here. I decided to find out, well, why didn't I ever see anything like this before? And I did my homework, and I found out, well, this is not your $100 desktop printer. It's a $30,000 piece of commercial printing equipment. As I said, I didn't know anything about the industry or about the equipment or what it costs or anything else. The German product actually was a product that cost anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000. And then I discovered that there were only a handful, literally 5 companies in the world that made these machines. One was the German company, which was actually a recent entrant into the market. The technology originated in China with a company that was a printing company that developed this machine about 15 years ago. And they had about 500 customers, all confined to Southeast Asia, India, Australia, a little bit in Europe, a little bit in Japan, but mostly in Southeast Asia. And then there was another Chinese company. The Chinese don't only copy us. They see something cool and interesting, they copy themselves too. So they found, so there's another company that was a laser engraving company that decided to try to copy this machine of the first Chinese company to make it. And they really, not a very good product. They didn't have the engineering talent in the printing industry to really make a go of it. Then there was an Australian company that had a beautiful website, and there was a venture-backed company, but they never even made a prototype before the venture company backed away from them. So they were out there with a beautiful website, but no product really. And then there was an Indian company, the fifth and last one, that had kind of a nice solution, but it was more of a very lightweight home hobby solution, very inexpensive, not designed for what I had in mind, which was to help people create businesses in delivering wall art into buildings and schools and hospitals and homes and restaurants and things like that, inside and outside. And so that product was no good. It really left only 2 products that were viable, in my opinion, was the German product and the first Chinese company's product. And the more research I did, I found out that the first company, the Chinese company, had a product whose resolution in the printing quality was twice as good as the German product. I also found out that it had a feature of being able to print with white ink, which I learned later on. It's a very significant thing, because what that means in a nutshell, without getting into the technical mumbo jumbo of it, is if you can apply white ink behind the colors of an image, you can print on dark surfaces or glass, and the colors of your image will really pop out. Now, the German product did not include that feature. It could only print with your basic CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, the basic colors of any printer, any color printer, even your desktop printer. But when you can print white, now you can go into these other dark surfaces and glass and still have images that will pop out beautifully. Mm-hmm. And so that became something that I thought was a really interesting feature. And it was one of the patents that they owned. And they had a big development company that was looking at doing more innovation and different things. So anyway, we did the courtship dance. I loved the product. Usually at this point in my journey of finding something to do, I will yell into another room in our house and I'll yell to my wife. I say, Maureen, come here, take a look at this. Well, invariably, rather than actually come and look at what I'm talking about, she goes and cuts up my credit cards and hides the bank account from me because she goes, here we go, Paul's going to invest in something nutty. This time she did take a look and she was all in, as was I. And so I struck a deal with the Chinese manufacturer. I invested a considerable amount of funds to acquire all rights to this product for North and South America. Basically, today I own the entire Western Hemisphere. It actually started out with just Canada and the United States, but then they saw what I was doing and how I was marketing it and how I was selling it, and they asked me to take over South America as well. And the reason none of these companies really came across the pond, so to speak, in all this time was that the machines do require service support, time zone sensitive availability of people, inks, which are very important to any printing machine. We manufacture our own inks. I have 2 factories in Kansas and in Florida that now manufacture the inks for our printers, which is very important that you put the right ink in the right printer. Again, something I do nothing about, but learned the hard way because I ruined many components of the first machines I got because I tried to experiment with cheap local inks without knowing really what to do from a chemistry level.
Sure.
And so these are all things I learned. And now we have a company. I'll fast forward 3 years. With 3 years in business, we put 100 companies in business throughout Canada, the United States, Central, South America, Mexico, Puerto Rico. Most of them in the United States, about 80% are in the United States, 15% in Canada, 5% in South America. We have 100 businesses with 120 printers out there. In the past 3 years, we're selling about 1 to 2 new territories because our business model, we're not a franchise. We want people to be independent, like I like to be. They create their own brand, their own marketing, their own website. They do it with our support and our help, but it's their business, their company. And our businesses, our customers have fallen into 2 basic buckets. The people who, like me, look at this as a real cool machine and want to invest $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in a business that's within their capital tolerance, if you will, and they're willing to invest in that in something new and innovative. And then the other 50% are people who like what they see, and it offers some type of additional revenue to an existing business, like a painting business or a signage business or an artist or photographer or interior decorator, where they can leverage their existing customers and add revenue through the delivery of art onto walls and floors. And that's where I am today. I feel very blessed. I've got a good team. We've got about 15, 20 people working for us and built up all the areas that are necessary to support this type of business venture for others. And my employees are happy and I'm happy and my wife is happy and I'm not finding anything new. And this is probably the last one I've got in me before I go back to the tennis court full time. And so here's where we are, Wayne.
Awesome. That's a really great story. And the theme of, I think you called it seesaw, from having a business to employment to having a business to employment, sounds like a really fun journey. And hard, right? Like up, down. What's that?
It was a necessary journey. And yes, I had fun along the way. I don't know that it was a fun journey, but you have to learn along the way what your pivot points need to be, whether it be something of a personal nature that, you're either bored with this or you're not doing well at this, or there's something lacking. And sometimes those are thrown at you externally by powers that are not in your control. Like a company loses its funding. That happened once along this path, that I was working as a business development director for a communications company that lost its funding, and so they laid off, like you hear every day. Just today, Facebook announced it's laying off 10,000 people. So I worked for a company that had about 400 people, and one day walked in and they're laying off 300 of those 400 people. I was one of them, last in, first out, so to speak. And so these things happen, and then you have to, but those pivot points you have to use as opportunities. If you don't, then you'll either become stagnant or you'll become depressed or you'll question your own capabilities. One thing I've never lacked was confidence in myself and in others around me that could help and support me, or I could help and support. And so that part of that seesaw journey, as we're describing it, I think is really important in anybody's journey. Nothing is a trajectory. and also for those people who are maybe feel they're at the top or something, nothing is a straight fall down either. There's the saying,
Yeah.
be nice to the people you see on the way up. They're the same ones you're going to see on the way down. And sure enough, just engage people openly, honestly, have good relationships, because you never know when it'll come back to help you or haunt you, depending on how
Yeah,
you
it sounds
feel.
like it's been a journey of curiosity and relationship and sales skills have, and like you said, be nice to the people on the way up and on the way down, and we would say not burn bridges. And what do you know, I met somebody at a tennis match who was in oil and gas. I almost pictured you at that point in your story. Maybe we should all go walk into a arena somewhere and go, who's the person here that's, in oil and gas or whatever is the current, or green energy maybe today or whatever. But yeah, magically you've managed to be here for these opportunities and stay connected. And
Yeah, you have to expose yourself. You have to be willing to be out there, not only for what you want to do, but also for what other people will see you as. I've always, well, not always, but as I've learned more over the years, I kind of enjoyed the position of being a trusted resource to others. And that happens today. I'll have a conversation with somebody who sees this they see one of our Facebook ads or a TikTok video or something on Instagram, and they inquire. I get 150 inquiries a day in my business today, of people. Now, 140 of those, they realize it's not your $100 desktop printer, but it's a $30,000 machine, and they disappear. But maybe some of those people say, not a business for me, not that kind of investment, not that time in my life, but maybe I got a wall that needs printing, or I know somebody. So you always make these connections, and you never know where they're going to lead you. And that's the most important thing, I think, is just to make yourself open and available to other people, because there's also times in these conversations I have with people who ask about the wall printer that this is not the business for them. And, whereas when I first started business, like most people do, you're happy to make a sale. You're happy to get revenue. That's a real thrill and a real high when somebody wants to buy what you're selling. But that's not always the best thing for you, and it's not always the best thing for that person. I've learned that over the years, because there's sometimes, you're real, when you're starting out, you want to take anybody with a checkbook and a pulse, maybe. But if you're not doing them good and you're not doing your business good, if it's the wrong kind of buyer, that's only going to come back and hurt both of you. And so there are many deals that I'll walk away from. There are many people that, get to the point they really want to do this, and I just know it's not for them, and they're not going to be happy, maybe because they're not going to want to hire people to work this machine, and they themselves are going to get frustrated with the chores of managing a piece of commercial printing equipment, and that's not in their DNA to be able to do this. So you have to sometimes get to that point.
So I want to ask you about two that we might perceive as bad things, but no doubt made you who you are. The first one is the bankruptcy, obviously, as a low point on your journey of entrepreneurship. Can you, at the depths of that, what was that like? My dad, his story as an entrepreneur includes bankruptcy, and he came to our business builder camp meeting live here and shared a bit about that. And I think it's something that maybe we could be scared of, or it has a negative, it does have a negative connotation to it, but ultimately it's a journey through something to get to the other side. And can you just share a bit about the kind of the depths of that, coming out of that? What did it teach you that you now carry with you?
Well, first off, it does bring with it, when you get to the point that you just cannot pay the bills that are being thrown at you, or you have the debt, whether it be a vendor, financial, personal, shareholders, whatever. When you get to the point that bankruptcy is the only choice or the best choice, first of all, get advice about that. Sometimes it's not the best choice. Sometimes it is. For me, I felt that it was. But with that does come the baggage that's associated with that, and the stigma, and that stigma not from the outside, but also from internally.
Right.
I just declared bankruptcy. I had this really successful restaurant in New York. I've just blown all this money, and now I'm even gone further beyond I ever was before. I have this obligation, or while bankruptcy removes some of that obligation, it's certainly out there, and it takes years before that will then come off of your record, so to speak. Just like anything else you do, it's going to take time. And in the world of the internet now, when you go and you're looking for a loan, or you're looking to get further investment, the question always comes up. It's on every application that you're ever going to see. Have you had a bankruptcy? Fortunately for me, it says, have you had a bankruptcy in the last 7 years? And I say no now. But for 7 years, I have to check that box. And so as a result of that, that is something that you have to work through. And so during that time, that's the period of time that I went back to working for people. And I wasn't even considering starting my own business or doing something on my own. Of course, I did develop that software product during this time because I had control over that, and it didn't require a lot of money. And what money it did require was from people who knew me. I didn't need a bank loan for this. So that carried me through those years. That it wasn't a barrier to my moving forward with what I wanted to do by going to work for some company, or by building the particular company that I did, which did not require funding from an outside source. So, and that's how I resolved that. But emotionally, yes, it takes its toll on you, because you consider it, while I use the term today, and I try to use it as often as possible, it was a learning experience. Let's call it what it is. It was a business failure, regardless of what the cause was, and who benefited and who suffered as a result of it. It was a business failure, and you have to take pause to consider, what did you learn from that experience, so that hopefully you don't shoot yourself in the foot again. And I think I did. I think I learned about partnerships, about researching the types of people that I would get in bed with at that point. If there was a business opportunity that warranted engaging with others as opposed to just doing it myself. And that probably contributed a lot to the path that I went on after that, whereas I did things more of an independent nature by being that hired gun and that independent salesperson, and to the point today where I have this business that did not require any outside investment. Well, that's not totally true. Some of the original seed money for this particular business, because it required quite a considerable investment for the equipment and everything else, and the warehouse space and everything I needed. This was no small venture to get off the ground. And I did have other people, share in this with me, and they've all since in the first 3 years all been completely paid back and paid off, and whereas I own the business now with just a minor 10% partner. Anyway,
Thank you.
It makes you reflect. It makes you hopefully stronger. You have to look. You have to also, entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Okay, you have to be a risk taker. I was blessed by the friends I've had, the family I've had, the wife I have, who was able to tolerate a lot of these ups and downs and pivot, and be there, always supportive, always confident that I can do it.
Well, you said your mission is to help people create businesses to deliver wall art, is what I jotted down. And certainly you're having been tested and gone through a period like that must really benefit those people that you're with now, which I'd like to talk about momentarily. But the other thing you mentioned that I was curious about was that you were, joking, and yet there's truth behind most jokes about, hey, honey, come look at this thing I found on the computer. And normally she would then go cut up credit cards. So that it tells me maybe there was an ideal on the way, or something you got engaged with that didn't quite work out as well as this thing has, or maybe she wasn't as into it. Is there any experience like that in your story? Has it caused tension in your marriage?
Honestly, no. It's caused tension in our lives when we hit some points where financially we weren't able to meet our obligations and things like that, which have happened periodically throughout the years. So that type of tension. But when I do say that, only semi-jokingly, that she would cut up the credit cards and do that. We've had times where she was more cautious of me being taken advantage of, because there were periods of time, the dog wash is one example, where I built up a company that I had a vision for, and then somebody else came in and actually bought the company out from under me and kind of put me off of the track that I had planned for that. Financially, I did very well for that. I had a good agreement, and the owner of the company took care of me, so to speak, in the exit that I had, but I didn't achieve the goal I wanted to because I was kind of blindsided by doing too good a job and introducing it to a US manufacturer that ended up buying into the company, which basically put me out of a job. And so my wife is more cautious, as are my friends, that I would be taken advantage of in a situation that I did not have total control over. And so it was less tension of a financial nature than she just learned that I had my capabilities, and and I should just do what I feel is right, kind of thing. And so whenever she sees me get excited about something, she wants to make sure that I'm with the right people doing it, or I'm doing it completely on my own. And so that's where that kind of joke, as you say, comes from, is that she always tells me, let's wait a minute, let's make sure, is this really what you want to do? Is it really the people you want to be involved with, and that? But she's always been supportive, and we haven't had to ever face the kind of tensions that a lot of people have, where money has been an issue that drives you apart. As badly as some things might have been for us financially, she's always been there, helping
Beautiful.
the yard sales and everything else, selling jewelry or whatever we had or something to get through to the next day, and to allow me to get to work or to figure out what we're going to do when we grow up.
Yeah, so it's beyond the scope of this particular podcast episode, and yet what we just what I just pulled out a little bit, what you're sharing could be a whole episode in and of itself, because entrepreneurship and marriage and that journey together, but wow, there just could be a lot to unpack there. When I asked you, where has there been tension on your marriage, your response was, well, there really hasn't been tension on our marriage. There's been pressure on us. Or tension on us. And that's really beautiful, Paul. However the two of you create that and however you balance things out, there's a lot of wisdom there that would benefit. I'm 20, boy, I better think about it, right? Almost 21 years married. And I've had these ideas and things I've gone down the path with, and Catherine's been supportive, and at times ask questions, right? And I observe it in my business builders in our group that usually it's one or the other is the primary driver of the entrepreneurial journey, and then how they work together though is really important. And it's not a bad idea for them to have a marriage therapist, not because they're screwed up, but because they want to be able to have pressure on us, not tension on the marriage. That's a kind of a neat distinction. That
it's not easy to open up on a lot of different things, from a personal level, from a financial level, business, whatever it is, and employees. I always encourage communication, and that's really at the core of, I think, everything. Just open and honest. You have to be that way with yourself, with your spouse, with your kids, with your company, with your stakeholders, your customers. It's up and down the line. I find that I sleep very well at night because I am open and honest and transparent. In this podcast, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, Wayne, and your audience, and the questions you've asked are great questions to prompt me to, relive the journey, so to speak. But you always have to reevaluate, yourself and those around you that are impacted by you, and do it in a way that you can go to sleep at night and you can wake up the next day and hopefully want to do it all over again.
Two more questions. One is, so you've had some successful exits. Can you successful exits? You sold your business, or your partner bought you out. Share with us a high point of that, because everybody, there's a book called Built to Sell, and sometimes it's good that my business would be saleable, and it's good to know that it has the EBITDA or profitability that somebody would make a viable offer. Can you share with us any what's it like getting some money from a business sale?
Yeah, so I haven't had a lot of experiences with that, because most of the time it was a partnership situation that unfolded by one buying out the other one. And generally I was the one being bought out because I had another idea and another path I wanted to go on. So it was usually the business, and if it was successful, like the restaurant and the tennis shops and all that, my partner would invest in his own future with those businesses and buy me out. But then there were situations, I guess, you know, on the other end of things, like with the software company, which was bought out by another company, and I took stock in another company as a result of that movement, which worked out okay. Not great, but it worked out okay for me. And so, you know, you do need, and these, I can't really, I'm kind of stammering here because this falls into the category of I know what I don't know. So for the first time in my life here at the age of 70, I actually have a financial advisor. I've never had to have one before, or at least I never thought that I had to have one before. Maybe I did. But you know, now my business is successful to the point that I have a concern for my exit, because being 71, I don't have a lot of runs in this left in me based on the stories that I've shared with you and your audience. And so this is probably going to be my last hurrah. I want to do it the right way. I want to maximize that exit. I want to get the maximum for my family, for my employees, whether my employees are going to be the ones to take this over, because we don't have children. Maureen and I, we weren't able to have children, blessed in that regard. Our children are the four-legged variety, and they don't need me to leave a business to them. They just need me to feed them and love them every day,
Right.
which is something that anybody's children should expect and get from their parents. But mine don't require the responsibilities of
Yep.
Some people might have to consider. But I do have a desire to make sure everybody's taken care of well, and that this exit happens in the right way when it does a few years from now. I've got probably another 3 to 5 years left in me, and that's about it. And then, so again, I do want to position this properly. So I'm stammering again because I don't have a lot of experience with an exit of this magnitude, and I want to make sure it's done right. And so I'm getting outside advice from people who know these types of things, so that yes, I can maximize the value, and I know, you know, what the books need to look like, and and I shouldn't be premature in it. You know, maybe I have this number in mind, and I don't know if it's the right number or the wrong number. I know maybe it will sustain me and my family moving forward, and my friends and all of that, but it may not be the right number. So I need outside advice and experience to weigh in on these things. So the only way I can really answer you, Wayne, and it's a great question, is half the answer is I don't know. The other half of the answer is, you know, get advice from good people who do know about these things.
Well, stammering is a gift. I would also call that like vulnerability and open and honest, which has been part of your journey and is how you've had all these opportunities, as you said before. So thanks for sharing that. We've got a guy in a business builder camp. His name is Matt Culp, and he's a wealth advisor for business owners. And in fact, what he does is like what you're describing right there, is help business owners understand, given their age and their children or dogs or employees or whatever, what's the financial gap between what they'd like to have and be able to do in their later years, and how they need to be taken care of, and would they like to fund some sort of a charity or endowment of any sort, doesn't matter how big it is, and what would it take to have cash flow to be able for the employees to execute a buyout. And so what you just shared right there will be music to Matt's ears, that somebody as seasoned as you is advocating for the type of work that he does. So that's wonderful. And so helping people create businesses to deliver wall art, and you've got 100 businesses, I think is round numbers is what you said. And so now you don't have kids, and most of them are probably maybe like me, like in their 40s or something. But it sounds to me like you probably have this group of people that you are mentoring in a way, and you want them to be successful, so they buy more ink and another printer and expand and all that. Can you just tell us a little bit about that, about your people and the crowd of entrepreneurs that you're helping to build these businesses throughout the Western Hemisphere?
Well, sure. We do want them to, number one, be the right person to purchase this type of equipment and get involved in this type of business for whatever their motivation and reason is, beyond just the financial capability of being able to, you know, write a check or take out a loan or whatever else is required to invest in this specific type of business. But beyond that, we want them to grow. We want them to, market locally the types of services that are being offered, and for them to find the right customers who will appreciate the type of technology that this can deliver, and not be and not deliver against those expectations. Everything is what it is. If you tell somebody that you're going to get a photo quality piece of art on their wall, or you're going to get a near photo quality piece of art, make sure that they understand what that means, and so that the experience for their customers is positive and gives them the referrals that they want to grow their businesses, which in turn gives them the business that will warrant them purchasing more ink, more printers. Our business model requires that they take over a territory and grow it and purchase one printer, one printer initially, and then within 2 years, purchase a second printer, and then in the third year, buy a third printer, because we've done our research back with the 15 years and 500 customers that were there when I first started this business 4 years ago, which now, as a result of my marketing and efforts, now is about 1,000 customers worldwide, because I also have helped other distributors like me in Germany, England, Italy, France, Hungary, Russia. I've helped other people who've taken on the same responsibilities and opportunity that I saw for the United States and Canada, North and South America, in their respective countries. And my marketing, which I'm the single largest distributor for the Chinese manufacturer, to the point that I'm actually doing some manufacturing here of our own, but I've become a resource to a lot of these other people, because my market is the world of the internet. You get leads from everywhere. So again, I don't mean to drift too far afield in the answer to your question, but we want to encourage the growth of all of these people at the local level, because it is also going to impact others. I always believe in cooperation versus competition. In Florida, we have about 10 different wall printing businesses, and they're always communicating with one another. Maybe they only have one printer in their possession today, but they've got a job that has 2, 3, 4 walls to be printed in a school or a restaurant or a home.
Yeah.
And so they bring in somebody else and they work out a financial deal between the two of them to help grow the whole industry of vertical printing for everybody's benefit. And we encourage that. We see more opportunities for cooperation between people. And you can take your printer, and somebody in Sarasota may not want to drive to Orlando to do a job, but it's the world of the internet, and somebody found their Facebook page or their Instagram or their website, and they contacted them. But it might be better for that person in Sarasota to say to the person in Orlando, why don't you take this job, and work out some financial agreement between them. So it's these types of things that we're trying to do for our customers to help the growth not only of their respective businesses, but also for the industry as a whole. I guess that's why today you've got 10 different hamburger joints and pizza places and plumbers, pest control companies. Look, people see what somebody's doing, they say, that's cool, I'd like to do that.
It works, right? What is how many employees, just to give us some kind of measure, how many employees does your biggest wall printer, independent business, how many employees would the biggest one have right now?
Well, probably 5. If all they're doing is the wall printing, most of our customers, as I said, they fall into a bucket. Half of our customers already have an existing business, either painting or signage or interior decoration, graphic art, and so they already have employees, and so or they may fill one role, like the marketing role or the graphics design role or the actual hands-on operation of the machines. But then they need people to do some of these other things, and those can be either outsourced, of course, graphics arts, marketing, that can be outsourced, or they have to actually have those people on staff. But our biggest one only has about 5 people, and most of them really only have 2. One person to do the marketing, one person to be the hands-on operator of the machine. And
so it takes one person to go out and set this thing up and run it?
Yeah, well, it's a 150-pound machine, so it maybe takes 2 people to move it in and out of a vehicle and position it to a wall, but it only takes one person to babysit it while it's printing. These machines print about 20 square feet per hour. So if you do a small wall mural, 5 feet by 8 feet on a wall, which I consider a small piece of wall art, 5 feet by 8 feet, 40 square feet, that takes 2 hours, but you're there for 2 hours babysitting it, and that's all you're doing. But to get it in and out of the vehicle and position it, that might require 2 people. whether those are two people on your staff or you solicit the help of somebody at the customer site.
Sure.
It remains to be seen. It's not an overly onerous task for a 150-pound machine to be pulled out of a trailer or a truck or the back of an SUV, all of which can support this business. People don't have to go out and buy themselves a semi-tractor trailer to use this.
Gotcha. We believe in journaling and people sitting and having a prompt and writing, these entrepreneurs, business builders that we work with. Anything on your mind that you would suggest somebody who is a business owner, has 4 or 5 employees, and they're sitting in their quiet time in the morning with their journal? What would be a good question for them to contemplate and write about and get clarity about, Paul?
What are we going to do today? Okay, write that down. Write that. My calendar is my life. Without a calendar to keep me focused when I get up in the morning to see what I have to do to appear on this podcast with you, Wayne, or to go on to my next meeting, or whether it be a customer call, or whether I have to order something or pay a bill, or collect money. All of these types of tasks and everything that are part of your day-to-day operations. Being organized, time management, I think is the single biggest thing that I use a journal, if you will, or for me it's a calendar or tasks. We employ several different software applications to kind of help us organize ourselves. For internal communications among our staff, for organizing tasks, we use one application. For our customers and bookkeeping and inventory and all that. But having access to those things and looking at them on a regular basis and just organizing the day ahead, that's I think the single most important thing that keeps me and everybody around me organized,
grounded. So what am I going to do today? Very simple, but in the morning to get present to that makes a lot of sense. And last question, how can people get in touch with you? Who would you like to hear from? And thanks for being here today.
So you never know less when you talk with somebody than when you started by having a conversation. So I'm always happy to talk to anybody about anything, whether it's relevant to me or not. This is not an advertisement for LinkedIn, but I use LinkedIn as a professional network to connect with people and also to find other like-minded people or people doing similar things. So I find it an excellent resource. I'm very transparent. Everything I've talked to you about today, plus a lot of the chapters I may have left out, are all out there. I publish, my life basically on LinkedIn for my kindergarten report card moving forward. It's all there for people to see. And if anybody wants to connect with me personally or on a business level, they can do it on LinkedIn. If they do want to know something about the wall printer, by all means, go to thewallprinter.com. Spend 15 seconds or 30 seconds of your day just to see what it is, if you found anything that I said about that interesting to you. And if it's something that actually you wanted to learn more about as far as a business that you think might be suitable or not, there's a simple contact form on the website, thewallprinter.com, that you can complete, and we'll get in touch and have a call just like this to find out, is this for you or not? And answer all of your questions about this particular journey. But yeah, I'm happy to connect with anybody. That's the only thing I would ask, is that if you do think that there's something you heard or something that you would like to connect about, you want to share your story, you have something that seems to resonate with you from here, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect and have a conversation.
Paul, thank you so much for sharing your journey with the business builders today. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for tuning into the Business Builder Way podcast. If this episode spoke to you, click that subscribe button and share it with a friend. That's how this message gets out into the world. If it is helpful for us to have a short conversation, I'd love to do that. Send me an email at wayne@businessbuildercamp.com.